Hey everyone, Morgan here. Welcome to another episode of Prepping 365. Today I have a very special guest on the show. He's going to be talking about basically the way that the economy is headed right now. He has a brand new book called The Age of Anomaly. And it's on Amazon right now. It's for 99 cents for a Kindle, or you can get it for like $20 on paperback, whichever you prefer. I would highly suggest going and get it. I read the book, and let me tell you right now that I am not like an economic expert at all. That's why I have him on the show today. I don't understand economics on the level that he does. And he explains economics on such a very clear, precise way that makes you just go, wow. That makes a lot of sense, and it shows you how humans react in economies and how they've acted in past economies and how we might be able to see any future economic collapse. He also has a YouTube channel called 1 Minute Economics. All links are down below in the description. Go get his book, go subscribe to his YouTube, and now let's head on over to the interview. Hey Andre, thank you so much for joining us today. So in reading your book, The Age of Anomaly, it was eye-opening, to say the least. What I gather about general economics is that someone gives something value, right? And then people perceive that it is valuable because it has been given whatever value. So whether it's $1 or $1 million or whatever, then people want it because it's valuable and will do anything to get it. Like whenever something is limited, people just go for nuts for it. Like there was a Nintendo limited release, and once it was all sold out, it was gone. Nintendo was like, I'm not bringing that back out anymore. And then it started selling on eBay for like hundreds of dollars, way above market value. So does this sound like an oversimplification of how economics works? So somebody gives it value, and then that person says, oh, well, I want that because it's valuable in some way.
First of all, thank you a lot for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. And you're actually spot on in that I keep telling people that so many things are confidence driven. Like, as someone who grew up in Eastern Europe, perhaps more so than people from developed countries, I've kind of gotten accustomed to the idea that even our system itself, as robust as it may seem, once again, especially in developed countries with these many institutions that safeguard against one another and so on, even so, it's hanging on by a thinner thread than we realize. And as you've correctly pointed out, to an incredibly large degree, that thread is represented by confidence. When confidence is lost, yeah, pretty much all bets are off.
I've always thought that our society could live without currency. We could run on trading or, whatever it is, but I've never thought that it had to run on paper and coins. If we look at it, we've given value to those paper and coins and jewels, but they had no value until we assigned it. So all the things we buy and are given value based on a variety of factors. I was recently watching a show called The Orville, and in one of the episodes, they were talking about how it's like a futuristic show, and they were talking about how Earth used to use currency as a way to show status and wealth, but now they don't use currency to show status and wealth. They use it as like the status in their jobs to show like how successful they are. Do you think that our society could effectively run without any monetary currency?
This is definitely the type of question that tends to open a bit of a Pandora's box because, yeah, economics is incredibly complex. And, for example, if we will ultimately end up in an environment where we have, let's say, free energy or close to free energy, then, of course, the entire framework when it comes to how society functions will be altered quite a bit. And, yeah, in such a situation, of course, a case could be made that we might no longer need a currency-based system like the one we have right now. But when it comes to our world, which is one of limited resources, a good currency system is, in my opinion, something that can help quite a bit. But this good currency system dimension is the tricky part because Currencies come in all shapes and sizes, from currencies that are sound and backed by something tangible or at least run in a responsible manner, to currencies that are used as nothing more than ATM machines, currencies that end up being debased into oblivion, and so on. And this is the nuance we need to be paying attention to, because unfortunately things are degenerating in our world, and more we have currencies that fit in the second category rather than in the first.
Well, history may not repeat itself, but humans tend to make the same mistakes over and over again, right? So what would be the telltale signs of an economic collapse? Is an economic collapse imminent?
In my opinion, yes. People have all of the reasons in the world to be concerned that an economic collapse of epic proportions will happen sooner rather than later. And this is because, as I point out in The Age of Anomaly, there are pockets of anomaly all around us. Whether we're talking about, one, our economy, which has essentially become dependent on cheap money and even injections of capital into the system. In a way, it has been zombified. And sure, up until this point, the narrative has been, hey, we have a crash, but don't worry, central banks and governments have it under control. This happened during the dot-com bubble. Once again, that led to an even bigger bubble taking place, the real estate one. When that collapsed, once again, the same narrative was pushed. Don't worry, governments and central banks have it under control, and they're just going to give the economy all the stimulus it needs until it gets back on track. People need to be concerned about what happens when that narrative changes. And when the market says, no, we think this is just too much, we no longer have confidence in your ability to save the day. So essentially, the narrative changes from, yeah, there's a crash, but don't worry, governments and central banks are going to bail us out, to, wait a second, what happens when governments and central banks themselves need to be bailed out? So there's one dimension. Another dimension is the geopolitical one, because as we speak, the largest that I know of, current trade war in the history of mankind, that between China and the United States, is taking place. And in our deeply interconnected world, it's just, it gives me goosebumps to think about the long-term implications of this. Or three, even from a cyclical perspective, only once has it happened that more time passed between recessions than right now. And if another year goes by without us having one, it would be a record. So even from a simple cyclical perspective, one could say that we're due or even overdue a recession. And with all these things being stated, I do believe, and it's the main reason why I'm all over YouTube, all over the podcast scene as well, spreading my message to anyone who cares to listen, that now is the time to do something about it. If you wait until everyone else is panicking, then you can have the smartest economist in the world by your side, and it's not going to do you much good.
So what does a healthy economy look like? Is there such a thing?
It's in our world, which is definitely on an unsustainable path, it is quite interesting to talk about what a healthy economy would look like. And in fact, our system is so dependent on perpetual growth, on growing no matter what, no matter how much debt we accumulate, no matter how much money we pump into the system, no matter what, that people have just accepted it as the status quo. And among many of my peers, there is this perhaps hidden belief that, hey, don't rock the boat, don't talk about these things, let's just focus on growing forever, let's not think about how unsustainable it is because we might undermine confidence in the system. But I might argue that if the system itself is unsustainable and therefore ultimately doomed, perhaps it's not the worst thing in the world for it to collapse sooner rather than later, so that, as you've mentioned, we replace it with something healthier. We replace it with kind of like a system that doesn't necessarily need continuous, perpetual debt-driven growth. So yeah, I think that's definitely a discussion we economists need to have.
Okay, can you explain something to me real quick? Bitcoin. How is it possible to just like make up currency, saying like, oh, well, now pencils are currency? I mean, how does that even happen? How can currencies like Bitcoin even affect our economy?
Now, as someone who grew up in Eastern Europe back when nobody wanted to do anything to do with us, back when PayPal didn't accept us, and so on, I can say that cryptocurrencies are pretty awesome, not because they're tangible, like this microphone, because of course they're not, but because there's a huge network of people all over the world who accept them. Like, from the perspective of someone who wants to sell products or services like I did back in the day, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but it was hard to get paid for it, it's quite remarkable that now you can use Bitcoin and essentially nobody cares if you're from Romania or the United States or Germany or Iceland. It doesn't matter. So I do believe that for all the right reasons, cryptocurrencies are here to stay. Now, to give you an example, let's assume you live in a country like Syria. You're an average family. Let's say that the wealth of your family is the apartment you live in, a car, some precious metals worth $10,000, and we'll also assume that you bought in December last year at the worst possible time, one Bitcoin at $20,000. We will next move on and assume that things deteriorate in your country, there's a civil war, and you have to leave. Let's see what happens to your wealth. Well, first of all, the value of your real estate essentially goes to zero because you have to leave it behind. The same way, you won't be able to take your car with you either. And as far as your precious metals are concerned, they are indeed far easier to transport, but from your journey, from Syria to your destination country, there's a high likelihood it's going to be confiscated at the border or it's going to be stolen from you and so on. Whereas when it comes to cryptocurrencies, the fact that they're not tangible and that you can have access to them by just remembering a few words is quite an advantage in this particular scenario, because that Bitcoin that you overpaid for might actually be the very thing that enables you to start a new life with your family. Of course, this is an example of a scenario in which owning cryptocurrencies would be great. However, if we lose access to the internet or something else of that nature, I would be far happier holding some physical precious metals in my hand. And this is kind of the message I'm trying to get across in my book. To land on your feet, the name of the game is making it a goal to have exposure to as many assets that complement one another nicely. Like, for example, precious metals and cryptocurrencies aren't the arch enemies people perceive them as being. No, they're assets that complement one another nicely, and the more balanced your strategy is, the more flexible you're going to be, and the better the likelihood is that no matter what life throws at you, you're going to be able to land on your feet.
How can the average person prepare for any sort of economic collapse or a Great Depression type scenario?
In my book, In the Age of Anomaly, I believe there are two dimensions when it comes to preparedness. First of all, what I do is I guide people through economic history, starting with the first recorded asset bubble, which is the tulip mania that peaked in 1636 to 1637, all the way to recent popular case studies like the dot-com bubble or the Great Recession, or even lesser known ones like the short domain mania of 2015 to 2016, and I'm pretty sure I'm the only economist who even studied that. I'm doing this not necessarily because I think history is going to repeat itself, but because history tends to rhyme. And by having a firm grasp on economic history, we learn a thing or two about humans, about what makes us tick, about why we go so easily from being over euphoric to full-fledged panic mode, and so on. We're going to draw conclusions, we're going to find common denominators, and in the end, these things are going to enable you to increase the likelihood that you're going to be able to spot the next financial crash as early on as possible. You're going to keep your ears to the ground, and you're going to have the historic context it takes to interpret the current events you're witnessing. But the second dimension, just as important, revolves around the idea that, look, no matter how hard you try, the next crash might still take you by surprise. So it makes sense to dedicate just as much time and energy, as mentioned in my answer to the previous question, to becoming more financially resilient in general, to building the type of portfolio and strategy based on your needs that it takes to land on your feet, essentially. Because it's not my intention to get people hooked on my predictions or on this strategy or another that I spoon feed them. With the Age of Anomaly, my goal is turning as many people as I possibly can into logic-driven, independent economic thinkers.
Do you have any other insight you want to share with us about past, present, or future economics?
What I want to stress when it comes to the relationship between the past, the present, and the future is the fact that having a firm grasp on what happened in the past is going to give you exactly the foundation of knowledge you need to have a clear head. So from knowledge comes clarity. And it's precisely that clarity that's going to enable you, as Warren Buffett points out, to be greedy when everyone is fearful and fearful when everyone is greedy. By knowing exactly what you want to do, why you want to do it, and what the proper historic context of whatever it is you're analyzing is, these things sound complicated, but essentially it's not that difficult to build this solid foundation of knowledge, and through the Age of Anomaly, I'm trying to do just that. I believe that unprecedented things are coming, and people who don't even have a firm grasp of the basics when it comes to the financial dimension of their existence are going to, in my opinion, get slaughtered, which is why I'm trying to generate awareness about these things as much as I can, because fortunately, mastering the basics is not difficult at all if you do things like I try to teach people through the Age of Anomaly in a logical, calm manner.
Thank you so much for coming on my channel. I know that people are going to learn a lot from your book and a lot from your YouTube channel. So everybody, again, go down to the description and subscribe to his YouTube and buy his book. And please tell us where we can find you and where to get your new book and all that. But again, everything is down below and in the description.
You can find me on the 1 Minute Economics YouTube channel. You can simply search 1 Minute Economics on YouTube and you'll easily find me, or you can just head over to youtube.com/1 Minute Economics. The book, The Age of Anomaly, I'm going to show it to you guys real quick, can be found pretty much anywhere books are sold, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iBooks, which is Apple's app, and Kobo. Simply search for The Age of Anomaly and you will easily find it. Now, two important things. One, I genuinely, when it comes to this book, don't care about the money. And people tend to raise an eyebrow whenever you say that. So to put my money where my mouth is, this week when the video is going to go up live on the channel, if you buy the book until Sunday, it's only going to cost, and I'm not kidding at all, 99 cents. It's a huge book, 400 plus pages. I really poured my heart and soul into it. But the main thing I want is not to make money off this book. I have tons of projects that do okay. What drives me when it comes to my work as an economist is this willingness to get as much exposure as possible for my ideas. And that brings me to the second dimension, to the fact that right now, so this week until Sunday, if you head over to my 1 Minute Economics YouTube channel, you're going to be able to learn more about the contest I have, where I essentially reward people for spreading the word about my book. So you can just maybe make a quick post on Facebook saying something like, this book is interesting, you should check it out. And the more you help me promote the book, the more chances you will have at winning. And since we've mentioned crypto a while ago, I have some really awesome prizes. The first prize is 1 entire Bitcoin, which is huge for a contest like this. But there are tons of other prizes as well, such as $100 Amazon gift cards, Domain Plus hosting packages, just a ton of prizes that you can win. And essentially, you're gonna be doing a good thing on the one hand by spreading the word about a good book that's available for pretty much for free at this point. And while you're at it, you're gonna be able to win some awesome prizes. So with that stated, thank you a lot for the opportunity of being here. I genuinely hope that you guys extracted a lot of knowledge and, fundamental stuff that's gonna help you from a financial perspective from our discussion today. And together, this is what I think we need to understand. We are in it together. By leveraging my experience as an economist, I teach you everything you need to know about the financial dimension. Other people specialize in other types of preparedness. And by being exposed to these various viewpoints, you're essentially going to be precisely the well-balanced individual you need to be so as to withstand pretty much anything life throws at you. So with that stated, thanks a lot for watching once again, and have an awesome day.
Thanks again, and go check him out and learn more about the economy. That's definitely something that is a potential for a collapse, and I think a lot of us aren't prepared. I know that our family is definitely not prepared for a total economic collapse, but there's a lot of different ways it can happen, and the better prepared we are through gaining knowledge, the better prepared we'll be able to tackle it you know, if it happens, if we're win. Thank you all so much for watching Conquer Tomorrow by Preparing Today. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye.